Yo, what's up guys? I just played the original Far Cry for my first time and I wanted to see if it could hold up to modern standards as the game's now over 20 years old. So I'll be going over the plot, gameplay and just my overall thoughts on how it looked like from a first time player's perspective. The only other Far Cry game that I've ever played before was Far Cry 3 and I instantly loved that game, so now I'll just be reviewing most of the games in order and I'll be starting with the original. To summarize the plot, you play as a guy called Jack Carver, who's a former Special Forces operative now living a regular life, renting out boats in the South Pacific. He's hired by a journalist named Valerie to take her to a mysterious island in Micronesia, and as she goes ashore, Jack's boat is blown up and he's left stranded. And he's wanted by some mercenaries who will have to fight on the island he's stranded on, and you'll see it in this clip when the mercenary gets bitched by his boss. He is then contacted by a man named Doyle, saying he can help Jack escape if he cooperates, and he seems to be some sort of hacker, scientist, nerd guy, but there'll be more about him later. Jack then explores the island and has to fight his way through it, whilst also looking for Valerie, battling mercenaries who are armed and seem to be guarding something secret. After that, we learn that the island is a genetic experiment facility led by Dr. Krieger, who is a rogue scientist. You know, your typical evil scientist with an experiment to take over the world. Krieger is developing mutant creatures called Trigens, which are animals and humans that are turned into killing machines. These experiments were supposed to create super soldiers, but that got out of control and eventually, surprise, the Trigens break free and the island just turns into chaos, with Jack now having to fight both mercenaries and mutants as he tries to survive. Doyle then guides Jack deeper into the labs and reveals more about Krieger's experiments, and it turns out that he created different types of Trigens, including gorilla-like brutes with some incredible strength, mutated humans that leap and claw, and some giant mutants that have armor, and to make things worse they've also been given rocket launchers because they weren't OP enough already, I guess. He also made some invisible Trigens that can only be seen wearing thermal goggles, and it took me way too long to realize in game that those goggles existed, and it made me hate myself. Jack then eventually finds Valerie after helping her get out of a lab, where she reveals she's not just a reporter, but a CIA agent, and she was sent to investigate Krieger. She reveals that she was undercover the whole time and Jack just got caught up in the operation. Jack then realizes he's become infected as the air he's been breathing have been affected because of the mutants, and then the same thing happens to Valerie. After, Jack fights his way to Krieger, who's also been infected by the mutants, and he's looking to save Valerie and find an antidote. When Jack finally confronts Krieger, he finds out that he doesn't have an antidote and has little time to save Valerie and himself.
The mutagen can only be administered through subdermal injection. I wish I could take credit, but I had no time to prepare the serum. You should turn out to be a beautiful specimen. Give it another hour. Much less for her.
After that, Doyle betrays the both of them, which, to be honest, I saw coming from the beginning, and he reveals that he was in on the experiments and working at it his way to make a profit from the chaos.
There's money to be made.
Why didn't you just kill Krieger yourself?
The Trigens are fiercely loyal, and you just killed their father. I'd love to see how they take the news, but I've got a super mutagen to sell.
Jack is told that he's basically killed the Trigen's father, meaning he's gonna have to fight off more of them later, and he picks up Val and brings her to safety and now goes on a hunt to kill Doyle and get the antidote.
Forgive me if I don't shake your hand.
I'm coming for you, buddy.
Jack kills Doyle and destroys the facility, escaping the island with Val. He gets the antidote and is able to bring himself and Val back to normal. And yeah, that's pretty much the whole plot for this game done in about 5 minutes. Oh, I can't lie, it was not worth all those hours of pain. Overall, I think the plot was pretty weak and repetitive, also pretty predictable. To me, it was obvious that Doyle was going to betray them, and the game just switched back and forth from fighting mercenaries to fighting Trigens. I got bored of that pretty quickly. However, I see the idea they were going for, and for a game that was made before I was born, it's realistically as good as it could get. Now, moving on to the gameplay, there were some ups and downs, and I'll start with the negatives. One thing that really bugged me was the crosshairs. It's just, well, it's something that they ended up changing in the later Far Cries, and to me it just felt ugly, and it didn't really match with the first person style. Also, the dialogue between NPCs wasn't great either. For example, if one NPC died, the guy right next to him would just ask him, "Are you okay?" as if he didn't die right next to him. There were also some things that triggered me, like getting shot through walls at these camps and not being able to tell where you're getting shot from. It just made the game so much more annoying. However, not being able to tell where you're getting shot from, it's not the worst, because it made it somewhat more realistic, so I can't really complain about that. Also, if one NPC spotted you, then suddenly the whole group within the whole map somehow knows exactly where you are, which was just dumb. And sometimes I could shoot a guy several times and he just wouldn't end up dying, which at times I felt was kind of annoying. Another thing that annoyed me was the Trigens. Like, one kind of them would just jump onto me and they could kill you in that one jump, so you had to kill them quickly. The fat big Trigens, they felt like they had unlimited health, and for some reason they were also given rockets, so they were lethal when attacking and also when staying alive. The invisible zombies, it was kind of my fault for not realizing there was a button to put on the thermal goggles, but they could have made it more obvious at some times because I'm dumb. One more thing that I didn't like was I felt like there was a lack of freedom, and there also wasn't a map, so I didn't know where I had to go exactly for the challenges, and I couldn't just go off exploring and doing my own thing whenever I wanted to. So I was restricted to certain specific challenges, and I had no idea where I was heading to that whole time. However, the gameplay was still very strong for a game that was made over 20 years ago. Despite it looking like it was made on a potato, it still had that Far Cry vibe to it. It had like different kinds of guns. The AIs were surprisingly pretty smart. They knew how to like flank, they knew how to cover. There was a variety in gameplay with different parts involving like vehicle sections, different mission types, and some terrain based challenges like swimming and climbing. And it also had a lot of tension to it, because some games they make you feel like some overpowered hero and you just can't die, but this game had me feeling like I'm just some random guy trying to survive, which a lot of games these days lack, like even in the modern day. So Far Cry does a good job in making the gameplay match with the plot, as the main character isn't supposed to be overpowered and bossing the island around like it's nothing. He's pretty much just a regular guy who's just ended up on the island, and that's how the game made me feel like. One last thing I'll talk about before my overall thought is the controls. It felt as usable as every other game, but there were some problems, like there was no save option, so if you die or if you close the game, then you'd have a chunk to play from where the game last auto-saved, but other than that, it was still pretty fine. The stamina bar also ran out pretty fast, but other than that, the game was playable. Overall, out of 10, I'll give this game a 5.4. The game's solid considering it was made in 2004. The map looks good considering how bad the quality is, and it gave a sense of tension and survival. However, there were some things that really annoyed me that will bring the score down, like lots of bugs where I got shot through walls, enemies spotting me from miles away. The story was pretty predictable, and the rockets that one-shot me that were finding me from the other side of the map really annoyed me. But overall, the game is still pretty decent. Uh, I wouldn't recommend spending money on it. It's damaged my health. I've never wanted to hang myself more on certain levels. But yeah, not too bad. See you next time for Far Cry 2.